Hi, I'm the True Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand gaming a bit better. So, we have now arrived at the worst era of Power Rangers, by far by most fans, except the crazy ones, but we don't listen to the crazy ones. Well, we listen to the crazy me, but I'm not that crazy yet, give me time. I mean, when people say this is where the series went downhill, they mean it for good reason because, oh boy. I mean, like, sure, there's some good stuff there, but it's like finding a piece of gold in a piece of dung. On a more serious note, most fans consider this the Neo-Saban era, where most people would also describe it as the era of not caring at all. So let's do a quick wrap up of what happened after RPM. Disney finally decided to cut production entirely due to a lot of reasons, but the most prominent reason being they didn't care about the series and just wanted it gone. As again, originally, they had no plans to keep on the series, only bought it for syndication right, and only allowed it to be a thing with a slash budget. And after a few years of doing nothing with it, Saban decided to buy back the rights for Power Rangers and, well, quickly put into production the next series. That being Power Rangers Samurai, based on, ironically, Samurai Sentai Shinkenju. Honestly, most people would have thought they would skip it quickly just to go to Ghostager, since it led into Gokaiger, and let me tell ya, they honestly should have done that, and later on maybe try to go back and try to do Samurai when they could actually write for it. But nope, they decided to plow right on ahead, and it was just for the worst. Because you see, for the most part, Samurai is more times than not just a straight up copy of Shinkenju. And like, when I say it's a copy, I say it in the worst way possible. Because what do I mean by it's a copy of Shinkenju? Well, let me explain. Because you see, unlike previous seasons like Gal Ranger and Time Force, when I say they copy, I mean like they took the base plot of it and just inserted it into it, adding in their own elements to be their own. Basically, giving their own elements to this plot as well, while giving minor changes here or there. And honestly, copying is not even the real problem at hand. The real problem is more or less misunderstanding and translating it without due diligence of figuring out and making sure that the plot of the week makes sense and blends well with the show. For example, copying the plotline of Wazard or Korag, being the dad of the Red, is fine in Magi Ranger because it's not only just the father of the Red, it's also the father of all the other Rangers. However, in Mystic Force, it puts sole focus on just the Red in a show about all of the members. It just brings undue attention to one member when again it's a full team. Because again, they need to be handled well enough to work on their own and still be enjoyable. Samurai does not do this at all. In fact, you want to know how much they copied from the Sentai? I would recommend watching the first episode of both shows. Cause even watching them, you can see how similar they are. Like, they literally run on the same ideas with minor changes, but we'll talk about those in a moment. But essentially, it is still the same episode. Though when I say it's a note for note of the Sentai, that's a bit untrue as well, like I mentioned earlier. Because you see, when I say it's note to note, it's almost like in that weird sense of like, think of a sheet music for a moment, and then every key is sort of off, either higher or lower for some reason. It's still the same song, it's just that every key is slightly off, not balancing each other well. But what is the plot of both shows to begin with before we continue on? A long time ago, there was this group of monsters called the Defiled and the Nylon that tried to spread havoc and misery so they could fill the world with Sansu river water to conquer it because they can't stay out of their world for long. However, the Samurai Rangers make it their mission to defeat them wherever they show up, and we are following their 17th version of their generation, who now come together to fight them again and defeat their leader, Goku and Xandri. As you'll notice from the Gal Ranger review, it's pretty much another retelling of the same plot, which is again not a problem, but it's just the way it does it is just terrible. And I think a good way to show this off is through the first episode again, by referencing the character of TheTrue and Jaden in that episode. In their intro, they're shown to be competent warriors on their own. However, they are starting to become more numerous, and their mentor, G, decides it might be time to call on the other retainers. But both of them are rejected for very different reasons. One does it out of ego, one out of concern. I hope you know which one I'm talking about, because at its core, it's a core misunderstanding of their reasoning, unless they make it very clear. The other issue is that certain concepts exist in the Sentai only works in Japan, like Samurai's very complex relationship between their master and how it works. Like, there's a reason why the others were so protective of him, not only because he's the only one who can actually seal their foe away forever, he's also their master and lord. Also their friend, but that's later on and is tied to that plot point a lot more, but you get my point. My point is, there's a fealty that does not exist in America. A good example of what I'm talking about is the episode where Antonio is introduced. However, because he wasn't a samurai by birth, they refuse him. While in the Sentai, it's sort of an understanding, but at the same time, they still view it as dickish, while in Samurai, it's just the logical thing to do, without applying the underlying logic behind it all. The best way to put it, it's just the nuance is lost. In fact, during my rewatching, I feel like the perfect episode to really emphasize my problem with the show at hand is episode 4 of both shows. The episode focuses heavily on Ryunosuke, Shinken Blue, a kabuki actor who loved his work and had to drop it very quickly in order to become a Shinkenger. While he does not regret becoming a Shinkenger, he also feels sort of lost without his craft and art. He also feels alone trying to ignore them to put on a strong face because, to him, it would feel like showing a weakness and a dishonor to what his heritage has taught him to do. And in my opinion, it's a well done episode as it also highlights Mayako, or Shinken Pink, character more that shows up in later episodes and highlights those aspects as well. But also, the plot of the week emphasizes this aspect as well. A kid is tricked into giving up his favorite activity and actively hurts himself, so even if he wanted to pick it back up, he wouldn't. But why would he do this? The kid just wanted to see his grandpa again because he missed him and would do anything to see him again. It's supposed to parallel their struggle, and how even if they do suffer, they do it to prevent others from suffering. It also has a nice moment where, while TheTrue can come off as cold, he is not entirely heartless. While in Samurai, they try to do it to a lesser degree and overall take all those aspects that enhance it by either oversimplifying it or just making it shallower, taking all those aspects and connections and just throwing them out without replacing it with something better or equal to it. And before somebody tells me, dude, it's a kid's show, I really shouldn't be trying to think about this that hard. And genuinely, I have only this to say to you. Fuck you. Genuinely, go fuck yourself. I have no time for your anti-intellectual bullshit. A story is being told. You should not be ever asked to not think about it. It's like if you took a class of media literacy and were never told to look deeper into it. It's stupid and insulting for those who try to put effort into their stories to achieve anything beyond the bare basics. What is important is, I don't think children's media should be talking down to children, but try to get them to understand and think about broader subject matter and concept. Kids are not stupid, they're literally inexperienced, and trying to give them an early way to think about stuff is helpful and good. In fact, what the hell does a kid show even mean? For me, that term is too broad of an idea that makes it hard to figure out what you actually mean. For example, one of my favorite ideas and examples of just showing off how weird this concept is is by pointing at Adventure Time. You know, that show that dealt with broad ideas like depression, betrayal, loneliness, self-discovery, dementia, self-love, and even death itself. All of that was explored in a show about a boy and his best friend who's a dog who can stretch. Sure, was it also basic and childish at times? Yeah, but that was fine too. All I'm saying is, just don't ask people to not look into the parts that are there, okay man? But back on topic, Samurai does nothing more than what is on the paper, but it again does nothing more than misunderstand the material on a fundamental level. And really, the thing they did better overall, that a good chunk of people would say they did better, was Lauren. So again, pod time again. In both shows, the red of the show is not the actual leader per se, because they're actually a stand-in for the real one, who is actually in hiding trying to get the power to actually defeat the villains once and for all. However, while Karu of Shinkenger was just there, Lauren was an actual character, plus they had an interesting idea of her being also the brother of Jaden, which is an interesting avenue to explore. I mean, they made the reformation of the team worse overall, but hey, theirs was a cool idea. Seriously, everyone liked her mostly because acting-wise, she felt the most well acted. Like, compared to everyone else, it felt like she was really, really trying. And it's just like, ugh. It was not helped that everyone was being a weird jerk to her in the show. Not outside of the show, by the way. Thank goodness. She was in fact included in the Red Ranger lineup, which was really cool and very nice. I only reference it because the show kept doing this weird thing of worshipping the Red Samurai Ranger for some reason. It's like some weird white savior shit, and it's really creepy at times. And again, they're just jerks to her for no good reason. In fact, in Shinkenger, they made it a point at multiple times that they're not annoyed at Haru because she's doing her job, she's not complaining, or even saying anything bad about them. In Samurai, they just complain she's not Jaden, and it's like, screw them! She is by far the most liked character of the show. Enough to put her in Battle of the Grid, but we'll get into that in a bit. Like, I can't stress it enough, it was just really one of the worst parts about the show. Seriously, how the hell did that happen? In fact, just to reference a lot more stuff, when Takeru's actor can act circles around most of the main cast, I think there's a problem there too when it never comes across as genuine but more of like, ugh. Especially when you realize he was also starving throughout most of the show. Yeah, for those who don't know, he did an interview a long time ago where we learned that his pay was utter crap and that he had to solely survive on food he was given and water. Which I just have to say, fuck you, Toei. I'm amazed that he appeared in the Versus movie for Ghost Sager. Unless it was in the contract, but god damn. This is why unions are a good thing. If you're making bank, you will damn well pay the actors a livable wage, period. I'm just glad he's doing well nowadays, because I've been told by more dedicated fans that he actually got really popular as an actor, so at least he's good now. But at the end of the day, how did Samurai happen? Laziness. That's the only answer that works. It's a haphazard show that has not a lot of material to it, and whatever it did originally was pointless. I'm looking at you, Spike and Bulk. Why are they even in this show? Why would they even shade for the next show? It's just so baffling because when you realize the next season is the anniversary season. So, let's actually talk about the games now because we might as well. Cause holy crap, we've been on this section way too long. I won't cover the Kinect game cause 1, I don't own a Kinect, 2, I don't want to own one, and finally, it sucks. Why the hell would I try to game a game that I know for a fact is bad? I actually experienced this game a long time ago through a friend of mine. It is not worth your time. It's a poorly running version of most Kinect games, and let me tell you, all Kinect games are functional at best, unwieldy at its worst. It looks bad, sounds bleh, and just confusing on why it exists. Next, we have the DS and the Wii version, which, to note, the Wii version is just a 3D version of the DS game, so let's just cover the DS game. It's another fine enough 2D platformer beat 'em up that's only noticeable with the spin disc that can be spun to give you a power boost, but that's really it. You could also switch rangers at times, but I mean, like, it tries to have some replayability by basically allowing you to choose certain rangers and they can bypass certain barriers, but it doesn't really matter much, and really trying to really continue on about this is really bleh. I barely got through a few parts of it before giving up and going to the Wii version, and then quickly realizing, yeah, it's just the same game. Honestly, the amount of time I spent with it was as much as I spent with the DS game, which was not much, because I know I could do more valuable stuff with my time in life than play this game. Not every game requires me to beat them and fill out a full page just to tell you what's wrong with it. It's just bland and boring. And really, ironically enough, that kind of emblematically sums up this season. Bland and boring. Not doing much with the material and just making you wonder why they even bother. And sadly now we need to talk about Mega Force. But with the Sentai's win, moving on. Do I really need to go on about this? Seriously, I can just skip it because any amount of time or effort trying to insult this thing would just be an insult to writers in general because it's just bad. I feel bad for every actor here except Andrew Gray, who's a piece of shit, for a whole bunch of reasons, because I learned some stuff outside, and I always hate when I have to say that, because I don't like doing research for stuff unless it's necessary for me to understand something. But for the most part, they were trying, but they just weren't given anything to work with. Megaforce is just a mess of a product that just does not even meet the minimal standard of quality. It's a show so rushed that everything about it bad is weirdly enough bad in the worst way possible. It's just boring. Yeah, seriously. You have the basic plot of the day, but it's also so dull that it doesn't want to even bother with that at times. Watching this show is a slog, and let me tell you, if you want a real video about this, go watch Linkara's History of Power Rangers, which is just good in general, but his particular section on Megaforce through Super Megaforce are really good, as it condenses a lot of thoughts and feelings that people have on this show in general. I disagree with Linkara's opinions on other shows, but that's a whole other matter. I still think they're good and worth having. My point is, this show was a mess, nothing really could have saved it. And it really begins with the idea of trying to mix two Sentai together. The two Sentai they tried to combine were, for any record, Go-Sager and Go-Kaiger. Two shows with given varied themes and ideas. There has never been an actual official reason why they didn't just skip Go-Sager and go to Go-Kaiger. Some have said they didn't have the choice to, but they literally did next time, because they skipped Go-Busters, which was after Go-Kaiger, to do Kyoryuger, which became Dino Charge. But you get my point. It's unknown, and I don't want to really spectate on that. I'm just going off what I know. And since there's no official reason for why they didn't, I'm just gonna say they were lazy about it and just move on. And since the show sucks, let's actually talk about a show that doesn't suck. Go-Sager. Go-Sager is an angel Sentai. Yeah, that exists. Short version is, angels are real, and we follow 5 guardian angels in training stuck on Earth after some aliens, Sentai, destroyed their entrance back home, which was done under the advice of Blade Run, who was actually a fallen angel who wants to rule the world. And now the Go-Sagers must combine their power in order to defeat him and the forces he manipulates. Really, if anything, the only problem with the show is that it's kind of like more of the same. The best way to put it is that the concept it uses is interesting, but it sort of doesn't play into it all that much. And when it does, it's like, oh, that's neat, and you just kind of shrug. I don't know, it's hard to deal with it, you know what I mean? And I think the better way to put it is that, you ever watch something that was just okay, like there's nothing wrong with it, but at the end of the day you would not watch it again if you had the choice? That's this show for me in a nutshell. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just, you know, there. Megaforce is kinda like that, but running at half capacity, and just shooting itself every time. Cause it both wastes its time doing pointless shit, or just do nothing with the time it has. Seriously, it is just dull. It does nothing right, and anytime it copies the Sentai, it does it just boringly. I just don't know how to say it, other than it's so dull. It seriously made me rethink on how I thought about Gal Ranger and Wild Force. However, the next show, this is where you'll actually see some anger in me. Gokaiger is considered by most fans to be one of the best Super Sentai seasons ever, and just a great anniversary season on its own. I've not seen Senkaiger, I've heard it's okay, but some other time. For me, it's a masterclass of just great writing that makes you care about the team and their journey, excellent casting that pops out and just makes you say, wow, I love all these guys more than ever before. And for an anniversary that truly tries to make its history a part of the show and actually having cameos, it's pretty neat. Ironically, the cameos were never meant to happen in the first place. Maybe a few here and there, but not to the extent that the show really did. And that's mostly because, like Old Ranger, Tragedy Strike, that actually helped the show. Oh god, that sounds so bad out of context. So, for those who don't remember or know, during the 2010, there was an earthquake, the Tohoku earthquake to be clear, that also created a tsunami that really hurt Japan. And it really did a number to Japan. However, through a lot of hard work and effort of former Sentai actor Sasuke, or this guy, and the Black Knight from Ginga Man, they were able to bring up the spirits of people through messaging former Sentai members who offered out some messages of hope, which was really nice, and ironically was able to at least convince one core member of each series to come back and cameo for the show. And let me tell you, as a fan of some of these shows, it was really nice to see them come back and respect each series really well. Unlike another show I can mention, for the record, for those who don't know, Kamen Rider Zeo is a stain upon the franchise of Kamen Rider, and will forever be the worst Kamen Rider series ever. Not only because it disrespects the stories of the main characters and their just journey, it just fundamentally misunderstands them on a fundamental level. For example, the Kamen Rider 5 and 4 episode, which honestly was not a bad choice in some regard due to some of the nature of 5's story and the nature of 4's story, but they chose to do it for the wrong two characters. These two were not friends. Ever. I'm sorry for going off that tangent because we're gonna have to reference it again for later. Oh joy! But in any case, here's a fun fact. Shin Godzilla was also affected by the tragedy and what kinda made the movie happen, which is very interesting to say the least. I would like to also thank Hecky Devi for telling me this stuff because their video was very helpful for me learning about this because, as I mentioned before, I don't like to research stuff unless it's something I need to know, and this was helpful to know. So, go watch their stuff, I guess. My point is, Gokaiger at the end of the day is a great Sentai, and Super Megaforce is a crime against writing. I maybe have been too nice to Megaforce and calling it just boring or Ghost Sager, but I will put my foot down here as saying, hell no, this show is just unacceptable on a fundamental level. The writing here is just worse than Megaforce, which is just, wow, how do you do that? One of the cool concepts about Gokaiger was the gimmick of being able to change into past Sentai members, and it was really awesome. However, when Power Rangers does the same, it's somehow more boring and just, like how the hell do you do that? Well, by simply making the show mostly about the fight scenes and nothing else. Any anniversary stuff in the show is done terribly. I seriously have no idea why they thought this was a good idea. Well, I mean, I know why, but we'll get into that in a moment. In fact, there weren't any real anniversary moments. Well, there were technically 4 of them, and they were basically just one for Samurai, one for Jungle Fury, one for Wall Force, and finally RPM. How the hell did they do that last one? Go on your footage. That's how. This show just does not fundamentally care. And that's honestly all that needs to be said here. The creators did not care. The actors were genuinely asking for more story stuff for them, to develop them more. But they were constantly told, it's a kid show, who cares? And like always, it's used by hacks to justify bad writing. At the end of the day, this show had so much potential. So much potential. It's like, you can see every possible thing they could have done, but yet they done nothing. Like, for example, a fun fact I learned after the fact was like, in the Sentai there was a character named Bosco, who actually asked if they ever planned on doing anything with his character, he would reprise it. Which was kinda neat because he actually could speak English, but they said, fuck it, screw effort. Like, what? God damn it. God damn it. In any case, let's actually talk about the Gokaiger and Megaforce games. But for the record, the Sentai games are better, but weirdly enough in a weird way. So let's talk about the Megaforce game, or Ghostager one, which is really baffling. Okay, so for the record, I didn't play the games in order. I actually did the Kyoryuger game first, then this game. And when I did, oh my god, it's just a blatant copy of the Kyoryuger game. Not like similar, like in that, oh, they have a similar look and feel to them. No, they are literally the same game. Like, same levels, same music, same moves. Like, what the hell? And really, all I need to say about that is, just wait until I cover it when I do Kyoryuger, because that's when I talk about it. Ironically enough, the Super Megaforce game is actually the only one with a really neat idea, as it's just a pure beat 'em up with an RPG-like elements to it, where you beat off foes and get stronger at the end of a stage. And while it's fine, I didn't bother with it for too much, because it's just there. If you want a simple beat 'em up, it's decent enough. Also, the roster of the game is also pretty neat, but whatever. Also, side noting, because I did not realize this until I was looking into the voice actors, ironically enough, Jean-Yon Bosch also voices one of the main protagonists of Megaforce, Megaforce Red, which is really weird. I don't know why they did that, it just weirds me out. Gokaiger got a Wii and a DS game. The DS game is just a bunch of minigame marathons that can sometimes be fine, but it's like, okay. You can also change into every Red Ranger in the game, which is sort of neat, but at the same time, it's like, you don't need it, but it's nice. The game has a bit of variety due to because of the nature of minigames you can do, but overall, you don't need to worry about them. It's fine, but don't feel like you have to play it. Next, we have the Wii game, which is actually pretty interesting, as from one of my friends who told me and translated the game for me, apparently it's a prequel to Gokaiger. Yeah, that's really weird for me, but in any case, you play at the Gokaiger going on their usual journey stuff as they meet a few teams. The Shinkenger, Go-Onger, Ghostager, and Go-Range, which were actually used in the first episode, though that was really neat. It's essentially another 3D beat 'em up, but basically you control the Rangers as you would like. And it's kind of fun at first. It gets dull really quickly, but overall it's like, Honestly, the story mode was what engaged me, but otherwise it's just there. And with that out of the way, let's actually begin talking about one of the better aspects about this era, that being Kyoryuger and Dino Charge. Let's actually talk about Dino Charge first. This season is considered by most fans to be the only decent one of this era. Well, until Supercharged, but we'll talk about that in a moment. As I mentioned before, they decided to get Go Busters to do this season, which again, we're not sure why, but we'll have to talk about Go Busters anyway, because in 2 more seasons, we'll have to talk about them because they did adapt it. Whatever. Though honestly, you want to know what the most surprising thing about this show is? It actually has some originality. Okay, I know it's a joke, but at the same time, it's nice to actually have. But what's the plot of the show? Well, let's actually begin talking about Kyryuger now. It's basically about an evil group called The Boss, yes seriously, that focuses heavily on three emotions, sorrow, anger, and happiness, and using them to cause havoc around the world to revive their master. And so Tori, the guardian of the earth, decides to call upon people to become the Kyryuger. Though to note, these people are not the first Kyryuger, there are other Kyryugers, but that's beside the point. Though I do want to mention Ramirez only because I want to say Ankudon! Mostly because it's hilarious and never gets old. However, if anyone ever asks you about this show, they'll probably say something to the lines of, they should have called this show Daigo Sentai King Ranger. Let's talk about Daigo for a moment. Daigo, for all intents and purposes, is a really big focus of the show. To a lot of folks, he feels like he's taking too much time away from the other main cast. When I feel like, yeah, he's a big focus of the plot, but I felt like he was fine enough. Though I feel like the writer could have balanced him better, which even the writer admits he could have done better on, as even the creator notes that he's not good with handling a big team and would prefer to have a smaller team in general. But stuff happened and he was forced to write it. As this Sentai is actually one of the bigger ones until Q Ranger with 10 core members. But in any case, I felt enough that the core members, the core members, get enough focus and enough good character focused episodes to them, and that I didn't really hate anyone in the show, to say the least. Got next time, oh boy, I got a lot of things to say there. The issue I got from everyone else is that he feels like he's inserting himself into stories that don't involve him, though I argue that he's more the facilitator of it and not the cause of it. And it's like, it becomes a problem early on, but later on it's not too much of a problem. Like, it's weird, like, sure, sometimes the episode of the week would focus on him too much, but other times he would just be there. Which, to note, the writer of the show, Riku Sanjo, was the only writer for this show, which is really weird because Sentai doesn't usually have just one main writer. So it's nice to have a consistency is all. Though I will agree that the form that Daigo got was too much. He shouldn't have gotten his own power form. That's just bad in general, and we are in a team show. No one should be particularly getting a form to themselves. But my point is, Daigo is not a problem per se. I think a lot of times people just get mad at this show because it's where the red focus became a little too noticeable and became like, okay, can we like stop doing this please? And it just got the brute force of it when the future shows we're going to talk about do it far worse. But what about Dino Charge? What's its story? Well, okay, it's a little weird. So this show's plot is during the age of the dinosaurs, as we meet Keeper. We'll talk about him in a moment. He was flying into space to get away from someone named Sledge, an evil bounty hunter that's after him for something called the Energens. And in order to keep them away from him, Keeper gives it to the dinosaurs to keep safe, and basically leaves Sledge a bomb that sends him out into space for a long time, that also causes the extinction of the dinosaurs. In any case, after many years, Sledge returns and Keeper decides to use other people who are bounded to the Energen to become the Dino Charge Rangers. So which one do I think is better? Well, Dino Charge at least tries, but there feels like a problem of first timers. It feels off. I think it's mostly because sometimes the actors feel like newbies at times, but otherwise I feel like they're fine. There's some good acting here and there. And overall, I would say it's better than what we got beforehand with Samurai and Mego. Except the Red Ranger for some reason. I don't know why, he just never rubbed me the right way. He just felt like his lines were off, but how he looked sounded fine, if that makes sense. Like, he was very emotive and very much, well, knew how to act properly. It's just how he performed the line was weird. Maybe it's just a me thing and I'm just an insane person. I also mentioned that I didn't mention my thoughts and feelings on Kyryuger. Weirdly enough, I don't know why I didn't, but in any case, I thought Kyryuger was good too, but it felt like it felt like he was running at half capacity, but still otherwise enjoyable. And I think it's just because sometimes the episodes kind of forget to use the characters to their fullest and having more ongoing storylines for some of the characters. I mean, like, some of them do exist, it's just that sometimes the characters could blend into the background a little too often. For example, Green in Koryuger kind of blended into the background so often I kind of forgot he was a character at times. I mean, like, they still did stuff with him, it's just that when they're not the primary focus, they get backlined hard. I mean, Uchi is still my favorite character of the show, because I don't know why, he was just funny all the time. Also, his theme song's awesome. Actually, the soundtrack of this show is actually pretty good. In fact, all the characters got their own theme song, and it's pretty nice too. But I think overall, I would rate this show better than Dino Charge, mostly because of... Okay, remember when I said the characters would get sidelined a little too much? I feel like this show does it a little more so. Not worser, but just more so than I think Koryuger did it, which is kind of like where I kind of break on it. But I think the best way to explain it is using a character. You see, my core issue with the show is something like Keeper. Yeah, seriously. He is so pointless to the show, he doesn't really exist past the intro because anyone could have done his job, and when he does appear, he barely does anything. Like, at all. It just makes you wonder why he even have him in the show at all if he's just going to be so background. And how he also tries to facilitate the lesson of the week, which is also a problem where I have with this show. Because sometimes the episode's lessons of the week are just weird. For example, in the episode where they adapt the Two-Fake monster, yeah, that's just how it is, just roll with it, which was a pretty decent episode in Koryuger where Black and Green were bickering with each other about their personalities and how they just don't gel well, and trying to understand each other a little more. However, Dino Charge doesn't seem to really get it in my opinion, and it just makes a member a jerk without calling him out. Because in the episode, Black gets annoyed at Green for training, as though that's a problem for some reason, and then in battle insult him for no particular reason other than to insult him. And while the team is trying to figure out how the monster is hurting them, he just becomes a jerk and says, we should just go after the monster because that will fix everything. And I mean, like, sure, it did, but they had no sure way to know for sure if that would fix everything. Plus, their boss was working on it too, so why does he do this? In any case, Keeper then comes in saying, nah man, Black was just doing his thing, and just be okay with that. And it's like, why? In a later episode, Black also bemoans and denigrates Pink's music choice, which I have no idea why. I mean, later on he mellows out, but that's not the point. It's that he never gets truly called out for his bullshit behavior. In fact, that's just a running theme through this one and the next one. Weird morals that don't really make any sense. Sometimes the lessons are counterintuitive to what they're supposed to be about, and feel really out of place, really trying to blend it all in together, which the lessons were apparently because of, and I got this third-handedly, was because of executive meddling saying there must be a moral of the week. And I don't know, it kind of hurt the show overall and just made me like, why? Those who ask why again, because this is something that really came up to me while I was watching Dino Charge. You see, I watched Dino Charge on YouTube because it was free and available. One of the weird things I usually do is just have the subtitles on, it's so that I can make sure that I know what I'm seeing and hearing are fine. And then I saw this. This is real, by the way. Oh, and I should talk about the villains for a moment. Well, I think Sledge is an interesting concept for a villain who's just here just to be evil and get some power for himself, not to rule the galaxy, but just to have it. It's kind of interesting. Heckler is a fun villain in general. Like, if I could say anything about this show, Heckler was the best villain I like. He's like a more competent Low-Four, or at least what they were trying to do with Low-Four. I mean, I just love the first episode where he becomes the main villain of the show for a little bit. It's just hilarious. And honestly, that's mostly because I think, if I can say anything, Koryuger's villains were more complicated, but it didn't happen throughout all the show, and it happened mostly near the tail end and the beginning, which is kind of a problem, but But overall, while I think Koryuger is better, that doesn't mean Dino Charge is bad. Well, except for that ending, because oh good lord, it's terrible. Who thought it was a good idea? Genuinely. Like, there is no defending it, and I don't like how some people are trying to, like, explain it away when it's just bad writing, people. Just accept it and move on. Though ironically, that kind of proves my point that overall, while this show does have problems that are not addressed, it's still overall fine. I just think Koryuger is better. And speaking of Koryuger, let's talk about the 3DS game. Because yes, we need to talk about that Ghost Ager game too, because again, they're the same game. It's another 2D beat 'em up, but it's just in 3D now. And that's pretty much it. Apparently it also has an OG story, but I can't be for certain. I had a friend of mine tell me, and it sort of is, but it feels like it's also just rehashing it, which is very weird. Arguably speaking, I think it's fine enough. Like, there's enough variety in the characters' movements, and they do play a little differently from each other, like height-wise and such. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not, like, anything worth noting. Like, I feel like it's trying, but at the same time, it's, like, just there. There were also some mobile games for Dino Charge, and I felt like I should mention that, but I have no way to access them. And now, we gotta talk about... no, you know what? No, I'm not doing this. Fine, I'll do it. Ninja is one of the worst Sentai I've ever seen. Bar none. Just this Sentai, what the actual hell? How do you make it this bad? How do you make it this bad? Oh, I know. Because it's written by the same guy who made Z-O. Yeah. And let me tell you, he did not do well. So the show's about the last ninja retiring. Just wow. Apparently go fuck yourself, past Ninja Sentai teams. Because you weren't real ninjas. I mean, like, they're not real ninjas, but you get my point. And also Jiraiya, who also spotlighted in this show. And let me tell you, every time they appear, they are denigrated and not actually spotlight how cool they are and be a nice team up. It's about upshowing them, which is what you're not supposed to do in a team up ever. In any case, he's going to give his title to one of his apprentices, being one of his grandchildren, and it doesn't matter at all cause only Takaharu and Star Ninja are the only ones who care about being the last ninja. So what's even the point? When I say any complaint that Koryuger got over its over-focus on the red is worse here, I mean it. Takaharu, or as the fandom has likely called him, Bakaharu, has always had this catchphrase he can never pronounce properly. Like, what the actual hell? If you cannot put the Ochikita levels of energy for the line, don't even bother. And it's not just that, he just can't act for shit in the show. Like, what the actual hell? Also, Blue can't act well either because they keep trying to make him this very serious character, and whenever they try to make him not that, it just fails terribly. Also, who the hell made the line up about the lawnmower thing? This is a real line in the show, by the way, and it keeps popping up every so often. It's just, what the actual fuck? Ironically, this is a part of a trilogy of episodes that everyone just hates, on principle from most people I've seen, and say that the only redeeming quality about these episodes is that Maji Yellow pops up in one of them, and that's it. Ironically, we're going to talk about him next time because he pops up in the next Sentai we're going to talk about. But now you're probably wondering, what about my thoughts on the other characters? And I say, what thoughts? The others are there for the most part, and that's it. Yellow barely exists in the show, and I could not hate him, but I really couldn't really care about him because he's barely a part of the show. I liked White's character, but overall, she just felt there and just really dumb. Pink is there, and there are some people who say she's the best character, and I'm like, that's not a hard bar to cross, but she's not that good. And I also like the dad because he was at least a good guy. And God, the last ninja is just an asshole. Basically not telling the team, hey, I'm doing this so we can actually, like, stop them. I didn't find his antics funny. It just made him out to be an asshole who didn't want to do anything. And God, Ninja Steel. Oh my God, why? Okay, so I might have had a few problems with Dino Charge and its problems. I mitigated them. Like, I felt like it had some issues, but overall, it was fine. Any issue I had with that show are just dramatically worse. It's like Samurai, but worse. I don't even know how that's possible. And I mean, like, in some regards, some people do emphasize its issues of just being that bad. And it is just that bad, but just lesser. I don't know how to say it. It's just bad. Like, for all intents and purposes, it's trying to be a redo of MMPR again, and it just feels like, why are we even here? It feels like it regressed all on the terms of writing and just making you care about anything that Dino Charge at least tried to do. And it's not helped that the episodes are kind of all blended to this blandness, just where, like, you don't really care about what's going on, and the lessons of the day are just really dumb too. Like, why? And barely most of the episodes don't matter because nothing is really learned or the characters changed. Nothing really happened. While I thought at times the Bulk and Skull analog here were funny at times, they pulled way too many, and I mean too many fart jokes. Yes, that becomes a recurring problem for this show. There are too many, and there should not have been that many. There were a few beforehand, but we quickly ignored them. And I learned this through other people, but mostly in Car, where I found a real source here, where basically, apparently, they didn't even want to make those. That was on them because of executive meddling, and from what I've learned, they tried to give them a catalog of farts. I can't joke about this, that's just too weird. And it's also weird that they aren't really a ninja team. In fact, the whole thing I was asking out throughout this entire show is, why are they ninja? Also, can I talk about the one weird aspect about the show that everyone just kind of ignores? Like, can we talk about the slavery shit? Like, just slavery, just kind of getting a hand waved, you're cool. What the actual fuck? It's so weird. It is so fucking weird. Actually, now thinking about it, they changed a lot from the base of the Sentai. So instead of ninja demons, we have space ninjas. Okay? Space seems to be just a thing they'll use for everything, which is kind of a problem since that can make everything kind of blend together into this weird mesh. Not saying it's a problem per se, it just can happen. This is also the season where we need to talk about a problem that I should have mentioned beforehand, since it got mentioned there, but we should just talk about it here. Because, you see, we need to talk about RPM again. See, RPM is really different from most Power Ranger series in general, and some people are concerned about how you would actually handle that series in the timeline, since it's pretty much a near-apocalyptic event, so it's hard to actually place it somewhere. And honestly, I don't get why. All you would need to do is just place it at the very end. That's all you would need to do in particular just to make it work, so that way it's meaningful without harming the rest of the story. But how did the series handle it? Well, by making it a separate dimension, and making some series a part of different dimensions, which I feel like it's just a shortcut to a problem that technically didn't even need to be solved to begin with. My issue is more or less they don't put in the real legwork to make it work, and just add another layer of confusion to the story because now you're wondering what's the part of which universe and just making it all just more confusing. And mind you, that's not going into Beast Morpher, but my point is, it overcomplicates something that you didn't need to overcomplicate. All you needed to do was just say, it's in the far future. Why are you overcomplicating it with multiple dimensions? And oh god, I just realized I haven't even talked about the plot of Ninja Steel. I would again argue what plot of Ninja Steel because the plot of Ninja Steel doesn't really matter all that much. And really, I feel like that's the damning thing I can say about it. It doesn't really matter. Something called the Ninja Nexus Prism comes down on Earth, some ninja finds it, takes it, his kid gets kidnapped, he dies or something, I don't really care. I can't even remember right now because I think he disappears for a lot of episodes in the end. When he does come back, and it's just weird. Like, I could keep going on and talking about how this all works, and like, I actually have a page here telling you what happened, but I really don't care. I really don't care because none of it fucking matters. I could go on about how Brody, the Red Ranger, spent 10 years of his life growing up on a ship full of people who killed his family. And I'm just okay. Really, if you want a really good way of talking about the show, go watch TokuCast's video in comparison with Ninja and Ninja Steel. Because at the end of the day, they say it better than I ever could. However, we need to compare the two and ask which one's better. And that is a real hard question, because that's a pointless question in my mind. Because the real question should be, which one would I shoot first? Because that means I have to decide which one's worse. And arguably, I see that Ninja's worse by the fact that they knew better and still allowed themselves to make this happen. Ninja Steel was just representatory of all the problems of the Neo-Saban era, trying to recapture an ideal instead of adapting and moving forward and trying something else. Which is ironically parallelistic to the Showa era of Kamen Rider at the time. At the time, Kamen Rider was kind of repeating the same idea a lot of the time without really doing anything different. Super Sentai at the time was actually trying to begin and try new ideas and evolve the formula a lot more, trying to expand what they could do with the genre and see what they could do. However, Kamen Rider would return. However, they would try something different, making it different every time they returned, which, while was unstable at times during the early Heisei era, when the Neo-Heisei era happened, it basically shot up, finally figuring out what they needed to do to survive and showing off what it could achieve. And that's where the problem of Super Sentai, and by extension Power Rangers, comes in. The problem with the both of them right now, in my opinion, they've been suffering for a while from a perspective problem. The formula has become too routine. The show has been on repeat for so long, it's become this predictable thing you know what's going to happen. Like, do we really need to see a Megazord fight every time? Because by this point, any time the Megazord comes up, they win automatically. It's not interesting anymore. It's not helped that they keep shooting it the same way every time and just making it boring. It feels like we're just rehashing the same stuff over and over again. And like, it's just weird. Some people have even considered that Super Sentai should go off for a year or two, just to get their bearings up. When I don't think that's the problem at all. I mean, Kamen Rider had technically done the same thing over and over again for a while. But at the same time, it never feels the exact same. You feel like you've seen something a little different from each show. Even if they copy elements from each other, there's still enough difference between them because there's a different, I don't know, vibe to them? They just don't feel the same from each other. If you watch one episode of Kabuto, it's not going to feel the same as something like Blade. They have different ideas and stylization between each other, while Super Sentai, it kinda just blends together and you just wonder what's even the point of changing up the team. You know what I mean? I apologize for going on so long, I just wanted to vent about it a bit and just get it out of my head. It's why this section is so long, like why this whole video is so long. I'm not going to be able to talk about Power Rangers or Super Sentai for the longest time, so I felt like I gotta get this off my chest. In any case, let's actually talk about the game for Ninja for the 3DS. It's a literal 10-stage game. I'm not even joking. It's done in the same style as the Kamen Rider games at the time, and let me tell you, they're pretty decent, a little dull at times, but eh. Again, I cannot stress this, it's fine, but it's not like really interesting. There's a Megazord fight for like 3 of them, so it's technically actually 7 stages, but ugh. I mean, like, to this game's defense, it was barely $10 at the time when it was released and not a full game, so there's that. I arguably state that it's actually kind of better, ironically, and I say that aloud like, oh god, why? But ironically, I felt it was better than the Kyoryuger game? Sort of. Only in that sense of like, it feels better. But with that out of the way, let's actually talk about the next few series, which will now lead us into the Hasbro era. Because Saban sold the rights to Hasbro, I'm not sure why, because it just seems weird. Though from what I've heard, it's mostly because the series was floundering. Basically not doing as well as they expected to. And I would just say, wow, you think? But I mean, like, it's also because they were doing some weird stuff at the time where Bandai of America was not selling the toys that were from Japan and just not doing that for some reason. Like, straight up, getting the international versions are just flat out better than whatever America was making because they wanted to make their own thing and just thought it was cheaper overall. I really don't get it. But in any case, Hasbro decided for whatever reason to begin adapting Go Busters, which, originally they decided not to do Go Busters because the suits were so radically different that they were unsure it would sell here. And well, they decided, why not? Which is so weird in some regard. In any case, let's talk about Go Busters. Go Busters is a okay show? Like, it tries to be different from the other shows, but at the end of the day, it still falls into the pitfalls of the series and kind of in that trappings in that sort of way. Like, I don't know. As much as it tries to be different from those expectations, it still falls into them. They're just still doing the same things, but just in different ways. You know what I mean? It was not helped that the team was overall bland. Not that they were bad, it's just that, I don't know how to put this to someone. It wasn't really engaging. Like, if you told me I had to watch this again, I would be like, okay. But then you asked me to memorize a lot more stuff about the show, I would be like, And that's not to say that the characters are bad, not at all. I think they're fine and they have their good bits here and there. It's just that there's this level of meh to it all that it's like, whatever. I think it's not helped that I kind of keep forgetting each one individually, mostly because of like superfluous stuff like how Red is the only one who gets the mech and who can handle the Megazords in the fight. Yes, Megazords, I did use that term because that are what the enemy units are called when they're in the big stages, which is really weird. Maybe it was because of Kobayashi's involvement with Samurai, which is weird to say the least, but moving on. In fact, it took me up till now to realize, wow, I've never talked about the mechs. And really, talking about mechs in any series is also a problem when, like I said earlier, when they all end the same way, there's not a real point to making a difference between one or the other. I was always interested on how Beast Morphers would handle Go Busters' oddity. And I could say this, they didn't. Or at least didn't try to. It's very weird, but let's actually go into the plot of Go Busters / Beast Morphers. Go Busters is about, well, the Go Busters, who after a young age, their family found something called hyperspace and energon that allows for energy creation that basically better than most energy making stuff in the world. And while at a research station, they became sucked into hyperspace. To save the children, they decided to send them back and give them also an immunity that allows them to use Energon technology without issues. So they could train to become the Go Busters to stop Enter, who plans on summoning someone called Messiah to enter their world. Though Messiah is not someone you gotta worry about because he'll disappear like halfway through the show. It's usually just Enter being the main villain. So, yeah. Which, might I add, I love Enter. He's a fun villain for me. I always like those villains who are like, oh, I can be serious, but I don't want to be. Beast Morpher tries to be similar, but instead of Energon, they are somehow accessing the Morphing Grid. You might have noticed beforehand that I never really mentioned the Morphing Grid or really any Power Rangers lore in general. Well, that's mostly because I don't like it as a concept, period. See, I don't particularly care for cross-series continuity all that much, because really all it does is complicate a timeline and makes telling stories harder and harder as time goes on. Like, if there's so many Ranger teams out there, why aren't they doing stuff? You know what I mean? And Super Sentai does that at times, but those are usually saved for either the movies or anniversary seasons, but that's it. And that's also mostly because, well, Power Rangers have this point of, unless it brings it up, it doesn't really matter. Which is something that I think is weird to have as a standard for continuity. Because either it matters or it don't, and if it doesn't matter, why are we even bothering telling a story? And I think the best way to explain my reason for not really caring for it is that that while it tries to connect to the now, it lessens the now in progress. I don't know how else to put it than that. In any case, to defend their new power source called Morph X through the Morphing Grid, decide to make their own Power Ranger team to make sure that no one can steal it, called Grid Battle Force, or GB. You know, that is a bit clever. I always do like how they try to hide it and try to do it, but in any case. However, after tapping into it, a virus named Ebox tries to stop them making Rangers, and actually sort of works at taking two of them and making them avatars, which ironically enough are never explained in series on what the hell they are to begin with. Which I'm not sure on why the show ever bothered to not explain it, but you know what, whatever. And the Grid Battle Force having to bring up two newbies to try to become the Beast Morpher Ranger. And really what's interesting about this show for both of them is that while there are a lot of similarities, there's also a lot of differences between them. Like, they have similar vibes to them, but they go about it in different ways. Like, I don't know how to explain it then, other than this weird metaphor I got in my head. It's like Beast Morpher is pink lemonade. Sure, it's still lemonade, but there's a different flavor to it in general, while still taking lemonade roots. You know what I mean? Though strangely enough, I actually still have a hard time choosing between the two. For me, my biggest problem with Beast Morpher is that it feels like I couldn't use the material to its greatest potential. Not like in an incompetence way, but more of a please slow it down and let it boil. Like, everything gets resolved in an episode or two. Like, for example, in a later episode, well, like during the mid-season split, the mayor gets infected with Evox, and the mayor is then soon quickly fixed around 2 episodes into the second season. Which, I don't know, they could have played around with it more, but whatever. It feels like it could have used the drama more and used it because of the potential with all the other characters and whatnot. You know what I mean? I mean, like, for one episode, Roxy tried to, like, you know, try to play into the idea of, oh, I'm actually good now, I need your help to stop being evil. And it's like, not even used for more episodes or multiple times, or at least playing the long game. Like, you know what I mean? Then again, if your problem with a show is that it didn't use the full potential of its material, then is your problem really a problem per se unless the material is bad? Which, I think Beast Morpher's material is just fine, somewhere in the same regard as Go Busters, but fine enough. But really, if anything, I gotta give Beast Morphers this. It's at least another good season, or at least a season that I think that can be considered good by most people, but that's a whole other matter. In any case, Beast Morphers didn't get a game, but Go Busters did, for the DS. Because of just where it came out during the time, because it came after Gokaiger, and you get the deal. It's another 2D beat-em-up platformer, and let me tell ya, it's like pretty much all the other ones, and it's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it per se, but, you know, you've seen it once, you've seen it all over again. All the same things that are just there. There's some neat gimmicks here and there, but that's really it. It actually only follows, like, the first few episodes of the show, and, well, that's sort of neat, but really, that's really all it got. Though I will say the models are pretty good, in general, and the OST is pretty good too, but good lord, why is everyone talking so much? Why the hell are you blasting my ears all the goddamn time? We are not in the Neo-Saban era. I don't care about you, Banana. I don't care. Stop yelling, Ryuji! It's fucking annoying. I kinda wanna pause for a moment and say, if you think these reviews are super basic, like I said before, I don't need a page just to tell you there's something wrong with it, it's just there. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing really worth mentioning. All these games are super basic, though I will say the next two will be a little more interesting than anything we've seen before because of just how radically different they are. But in any case, after Beast Morphers, they decided to adapt another dinosaur series. Less than 3 series after Dino Charge. Huh. Like, I get it in some regard, but at the same time, really? This is where we need to mention Simon Bennett again, who's actually the showrunner at the time. He's no longer the showrunner, so whenever I say a few things, just note, I don't think bad about him, I'm just saying facts about it and just the weird oddities around it, okay? See, Simon Bennett also kind of mentioned that they kind of talked about the process of choosing which shows to adapt. And some of their decisions to adapt certain shows were kind of dumb. I mean, like, for example, they decided to not adapt ToQger because, well, nobody likes trains here. Which is really weird. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, Go-Go 5 / Lightspeed Rescue was a train Sentai, and it had a train in it, though then again, it wasn't the main focus, but it was a thing, a part of their series. Though then again, I think it would have been harder to adapt it in general because of choices they made. For example, this guy, they decided to make Cosmic Royale for Ninja Steel for some reason. Why did they give him a face that looked like Elgar? Why? And use this suit for this series as well, which is really weird. Again, I'm not sure why. They pretty much do not want to do ToQger, and while I don't think ToQger is good, it's not like unredeemable. I mean, heck, they adapted Samurai and the Ninja one. Like, I'm sorry, that's a little weird because those elements don't sell as well as some people think they do, and not as well as some people would want them to do. Like me. But really, these posts kind of reveal a sort of mindset for me that they're looking for something to easily sell something, rather than trying to make it work to be good. And I feel like therein lies the root of the issue for Power Rangers right now. It languishes due to Power Rangers being too safe with the brand and not actually trying to do the work to make it interesting, and just falling back to the old ideas that don't work anymore. Also, Simon Bennett left a tweet that just baffles me on a fundamental level. It just shows to me there's a problem in general. Like, if you want that tweet, this is the one, where basically he just says, Power Rangers needs to lose its Toku roots. And I have to just ask, what the hell does that even mean? Like, seriously, what does that mean exactly? Because it sounds so backwards, like, why are you trying to take away the thing that make the thing enjoyable? Like, what are you talking about? It's like telling people who's making Arrow or Flash, you know, those shows, to stop being Flash or Green Arrow. It's weird. Though I technically heard they tried to do that with the show, but you get my point. And look, as someone who's seen too much of this show and both Super Sentai and Power Rangers, I can just tell you right now, at the end of the day, it is the limitations put onto it rather than the medium it is using. I mean, like, there's a whole contingent of fans who believe that Power Rangers can survive only by being an animated show, which I have to disagree on a fundamental level. Because to me, it feels like they want to try to say it will solve all the creative problems at the end of the day, when it was not. Power Rangers exists and survives by the fact that the Sentai exists, because it helps to make sure that the show survives with even an abysmal budget, since they don't want to apparently pay anyone more to do something, but want massive profits. See what's happening? Like, I get it, they want to sell enough to make sure the show can keep going, it's just that their problem has always come down to just being too safe, and they are strangleholding the writing to prevent them from achieving greatness, because I can't believe Power Rangers can achieve what it wants to and show it's possible and be amazing at the same time. And you know what, after saying all that, we need to talk about Dino Fury and Real Soldier. You know what, this is another time where I could say, yeah, Dino Fury is better. Because the thing is about Real Soldier is that, well, it's just there. Like, remember how I said Go Busters was just their show? This is even a more their show. So much to the point where I'm just like, what exactly happened again? I am literally forgetting what's happening right as I'm speaking. And I just literally watched the show as I'm speaking. I barely remember the characters, I barely remember what was happening, and I barely remember who the villains were. They were that dull to me. And I kind of feel like even telling you what happened in Real Soldier is kind of pointless because it kind of doesn't really matter. I genuinely don't remember. Holy shit. Like, I believe it was a plot about some ancient beings before the dinosaurs who left the planet, then came back to do stuff, while also somebody who from the ancient dinosaur people also becoming the civilization that would... Knights? God damn it, I'm not joking here when I say I literally am forgetting everything about this show, and I can't stress this enough. I am literally forgetting everything about that show. I literally just watched it. And the oddity is that I remember what happened in Dino Fury a lot more, though then again, I think it's also just because I have a lot more things to say about Dino Fury because of a weird oddity they added in, which we'll need to begin talking about two things here. So, simplified version of the plot, someone called the Boy Knight comes to Earth to try to find the Sporix and try to unleash them on the Earth. However, Zato calls upon other people to become the Dino Fury Rangers. Yeah, just roll with it. In order to defeat him and the Sporix, which actually came from Zato's world, because Zato's an alien, and also due to stuff we later learn, when they came to Earth to try to stop the Sporix from being more infecting the planet, the Morphing Masters appear in front of them. Oh boy, we need to talk about this. Linkara did a good part about this in his video about Dino Fury, but here's the short version. The Morphin Masters are actually more from the comics than from this show because they were only referenced one time. And I mean one time. But this is where we need to reference the comics, and well, we need to reference the game as well. Yes, because that's important too. Sort of. Let me elaborate. The comics basically follow the MMPR crew and whatever they were doing. Basically a retelling of that era, but more in a modern sense. But that's really it. I've never read them and I've heard they're good, I just don't care enough for them. Because I'm more for every other era than the MMPR stuff, because OG MMPR stuff is really, really boring. But again, I've heard it's good and I'm not degrading anyone who's ever read them. They exist. But the Morphing Masters are part of some weird complex lore that I'm just not interested in just saying they exist. And it really kind of falls into my earlier discussion about continuity and how like this reveal of them is really weird because they actually use the Morphing Masters as a way to like semi-retcon and try to explain some weird plot points in the series. And it's like, no. Don't do that. That's bad. Granted, if they had planned on actually saying that like, that was the entire plan, but no. No, they tell you like a bunch of series, and it's weird. Like, it's not a big focus, but the fact that they had to reference it is weird. And when we get to Cosmic Fury, we're gonna have to actually try to elaborate on that more, but I'll try to combine that with another thing we'll talk about. And really, I can't even stress this enough that Dino Fury is so much better than Real Soldier. Like, trying to remember Real Soldier is like really weird for me. And really, Dino Fury at least has some good ideas and very different plots of the week than Power Rangers usually would. And I think that helps it. There's also well, they also brought back another person we really did not expect. Zed. Which, Zed is a weird villain in general because of Axelrod's death, the actor who played the voice of Zed, since he was sick and was unable to afford medical care, which is really fucked up because the medical system is fucked up. Fuck the medical system. And in any case, he was replaced with somebody else who was harassed a lot, like, what the actual fuck? The actor was just doing their job. But yeah, Zed's return. It's really a strange choice when you also realize that Zed's introduction was not intended originally in the original show. Yeah, I'm not joking. It wasn't originally planned, but they were able to insert him well enough in their material. Which is nice and all, but at the same time it's like, huh. This would also be around the same time that, well, Power Rangers was free from the Nickelodeon brand deal. Meaning they were no longer restricted by whatever reasons that Nickelodeon would want to do. Because let me tell you, Nickelodeon would try to hurt the show however they could. and they were put into, well, streaming with Netflix. Which, to side note by the way, I didn't mention this in my Beast Morphers part, but I'll just mention it here. Beast Morphers is weird on Netflix. Basically, Season 1 isn't on Netflix, but Season 2 is. Which I am just baffled by. What? Why is Season 2 on Netflix but not Season 1? You know? The thing worth wanting to watch first? I really don't get why. But in any case, this would be the home for, well, I say Power Rangers, but it's only like MMPR and whatever the Neo-Saban era stuff. That's it. Which is just, why though? I'll just say capitalism and leave it at that. But in any case, Dino Fury. Pretty okay show. Pretty good. Good direction. Good idea. The acting could be better at times, but overall, hey, pretty good. Real Soldier? When I remember it, I'll remember it. Now, let's actually talk about the comics for a moment again and talk about one of the games. You see, during the comics line at the time, there was something called Battle for the Grid. It was a tie-in comic line where basically it would tie into a bunch of plot lines and ideas from that into this sort of mini-event where basically Tommy's character would become Lord Draken in an alternate dimension and become a threat for all dimensions of Power Rangers and try to destroy them. From what I've heard, it's a well-regarded chapter of the series and really holds up really well. I've never read it again because, again, I don't read it, but it's nice to hear that it did well. And now, we need to talk about the tie-in game. Yes, there was a game. And let me tell ya, I don't like it. Okay, that needs an explanation to itself, so let's do a quick explanation of why I don't like it. Well, for one thing, it's a fighting game. But it's not just any type of fighting game, it's a versus or a tag team / cross game where you can switch out team members at any time you want to do combos that can usually end up broken, which this game is. When I say this game's broken, I mean everyone, and I do mean this, everyone has a freaking infinite combo. Did I stutter? I mean that very clearly. Everyone has an infinite combo. Alone. They don't need your other team members or anything, no. You could just do one combo and you could basically kill most foes with just one combo. And that's stupid. I find that anything that has a touch of death combo or infinite combo are bad designs in general in fighting games because it's about two players fighting each other, and when one player is forced to put their controller down for a real long time, I feel like there's a problem in game design. And it sucks too because it looks nice, feels nice. It kind of gave me a DNF Duel sort of vibe because it actually plays like that, where instead of inputting input controls like a quarter circle, punch, kick, whatever, you instead press a direction and then a button to do a move, which is interesting enough but can lead into some simplistic game design. But overall, my problem is that, again, that infinite combo. I mean, like, when the AI can actually perform that shit on the fly, I feel like there's a problem. And the tutorial does not help you enough to learn that, yeah, this is this sort of game. And I want to mention, it looks cool, and I mean, like, all of the things just look amazing. And it sucks too, because a bunch of my favorite Rangers are there, like Quantum Ranger and Deca Master. Which sucks, because I really want to play them, but then I realize, why the hell should I play this game? It's not helped that also story mode, it's just a truncated version of the plot line. So I'm like, whatever. It's also a very repeated game because we need to talk about my other issue. Most of the game's cast ain't in the game. Like, a good chunk of them are not important to the plot or the game. Like, the game's roster is barely 12 characters, if you include the secret one the game revealed later on, but otherwise, no. You are just playing the game with a few select characters and that's it. And the DLC costs more than the game itself just to get everyone because the game's DLC is way too expensive. I was lucky at the time to get the game on a cheap, and basically after playing it a bit and saying to myself, wow, I don't like this one bit. and returning it very quickly because I did not like the game. And really, when most of the game's characters are locked behind DLC, I feel like there's a problem. And again, it sucks so much that I have to say that because I wanted to enjoy this game. I really did. But the infinite combo, the roster, the story mode being kind of bland, just hurts it too much for me to enjoy it. You might have noticed that I haven't talked about the Zoologer game, or not have cared because you're wondering, Zoologer? Didn't get the chance to play it because the game is actually broken. Or at least I couldn't get it to work on an emulator and a bunch of other stuff, so I had to skip it. Sorry everyone. I would talk about the show, but I didn't have the chance to because, oh my god, I am not wasting more time to watch a show. And are you noticing how long this is going? Too long. Let's just finish up everything else and just finish. There was also the Lupin vs. Power Ranger, but here are my thoughts on it. Lupin vs. Power Ranger had a cool idea, but just ended up just being a popularity contest that the Power Rangers would win every time because they were more interesting. Okay, quick aside here, I have no idea why, but originally I said this game was an edutainment game. When re-looking at the footage again of the game, it's really not, it's just these 3 minigames and that's it. And I'm like, why? No one should spend their money on this. Do not buy this. Only if you're a collector. And I'm not spending $30 to just play that. So let's talk about Once and Always and Cosmic Fury with also Q-Ranger. Cosmic Fury wins. I hate Lucky. Screw off. Look, Q-Ranger's not bad per se, but it's not like good. It's mostly because, remember when I said the red focus was getting out of hand? Lucky, it's just the epitome of it. Where in the last few episodes, he gets a power up that basically makes him the only one who can do it. Which to note, I hid it in Kyoryuger. Why the hell would I accept it here? In fact, if anything, I think Kyoryuger did it better because at least they set up that Daigo was actually pretty cool, while they made Lucky a person whose nickname is Dumb Luck. Where literally throughout the entire show, he only wins by pure luck. And I don't mean all the time, I mean literally all the time. It's not helped that his catchphrase is said almost over 100 times. Though sometimes he won't say it at all and will just speedrun saying it in some episodes. It's very weird. And the rest of the cast is just there. Some are good, some are bad. Here are the list. Here's a tier. I don't care. Look, it had a cool idea. It just did not have enough to work with. Not helped that the team is way too big for its own good. Which just generally meant some characters get nothing and some characters get too much. Though to be fair, I do think some of the suits are really amazing and well done. I actually think they have some cool ideas to them, and the Q-Tomas are not a bad idea for a Haitian device, but the mech is just kind of bad. Which is ironically the only thing they took from Cosmic Fury. Which, let's actually talk about that now. Well, sorta, because we need to talk about Once and Always. Once and Always was made as a 30-year anniversary special, where basically, not only would Billy Yost come back, but also Walter Jones as well. Who actually said he would love to come back, it's just a manager thing, it just didn't happen for a while until now. Which is nice. The movie will just focus on both of them and the daughter of Trini working together to stop the return of Rita. Well, Robo-Rita. It's complicatedly stupid, don't worry about it, it's not important. Though ironically enough, this is where we need to bring up some weird stuff. You see, at the production of this video while I was voicing it, see, Power Rangers is getting another game that also features the original MMPR stuff with Robo-Rita as a character. So basically, I'm going to have to cover that on its own another time, so yeah. Joy. In any case, my thoughts on the special is this. While I get what they're trying to do, it's not that great. It tries to have a lot of ideas and cool ideas to it, trying to keep on the legacy and whatnot, but I don't know, the idea of it is not as interesting as it thinks it is. It's also not helped that the special is really focused on Zack and Billy for the most part, where they're arguing about Trini's daughter, which I can't even remember her name. Oh god. In any case. And whether or not they should allow her to become a Power Ranger, which it's kind of pointless because she becomes one at the end of the day, and it's like, there's a nice lesson at the end of the day, but whatever, it's there. They couldn't get back other actors for it for, sadly, a bunch of reasons that I don't want to get into. But the point being is, I think it's fine. I think it's fine at the end of the day. But it's not, like, up there, you know what I mean? But why mention it? Because you see, it sort of leads into the other thing we need to talk about, Cosmic Fury. Cosmic Fury is where, instead of a full season, they would keep the old team again from Dino Fury and make a new team. Sorta. Basically just give them a new suit and that's it. And instead, they just make new suits altogether rather than relying on Sentai suits. Man, do these suits look boring. Like, here's the thing about me and suits. Suits gotta look interesting. These are just, ugh. They're not very cool looking, they're just bland. Like, my best guess is that they wanted to keep them simple to sell toys easily, because that's always been the problem with Bandai of America and a bunch of other American stuff, where they want to keep it simple so they can sell the toys really easily and not have to spend much to make them look better. Suits were not a good thing, but I will praise this. I think the idea of Cosmic Fury as a whole was pretty good. Basically, taking on the idea of Zed's on the loose, he's trying to do something, and there were some interesting ideas about an actual evil ranger for a little bit until it's revealed that he wasn't actually Control, and basically trying to do a sort of evil version of Countdown to Destruction where Zordon's good ways would destroy all evil. They would do a Zed's evil would destroy all good, which is a weird concept, but whatever. I overall liked it, but I felt as though it could have kept some cool concepts to itself, but it's kind of like my thoughts on Beast Morphers, where Beast Morphers tries to be different, but when it tries to do something really different, it tries to finish it almost immediately and not let it sizzle a bit, you know what I mean? But I overall still enjoyed it. I liked what it was trying to do. I feel like it was trying to be more mature, for lack of a better term, but not too dark. But you know what I mean? Like, where, you know, like, I'm trying to think of a good example of Kamen Rider Amazons. Sorry, I get those confused sometimes. Where it was just, edgy, you know what, that type of shit. It was just not enjoyable. Do not watch it, it's terrible. I would argue something more like Kamen Rider Black or Shin Black, which I thought were pretty cool and used the material tastefully enough. But in any case, we're done. We're finished. We're done. Oh boy. Sadly, we don't know what's going to come up next. And that's kind of sad. Super Sentai at the moment right now has been in a bit of decline, though we have been getting good series out of them. For example, Dawn Brothers. I know, weird choice to have, but I feel like ending with them is ironic in a lot of ways. Because we began the series with Jetman, and the writer of that was Toshiki Inoue. And to introduce us to this new era of Super Sentai, we have Toshiki Inoue with the Dawn Brothers. Which some people really enjoy. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, it looks nice. And I hope I'll get to see it soon. But I also hope to see whatever comes up with Power Rangers, because despite a lot of the negativity I've had in this video, I still want it to be a thing. I want to see them try new stuff. I want to see them go and be more, because I love this series. I made friends through this series. I just wanted to keep going and see where it all goes from here. And talking about the games has really made me appreciate some seasons that I didn't really think I appreciated, like Jungle Fury. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did, but ironically I did. And other series like Lightspeed Rescue and Go-Go Fight. I thought I didn't like it at first, but really looking at it now, I kind of did. At the end of the day, Power Rangers and Super Sentai are pretty cool. They have their ups and lows, but that's just life. In any case, from one tie-in game to another, we're going to Treasure Planet and exploring the Battle of Procyon. Procyon? Yeah, that.